Hey everybody, what's up? What's up? Welcome to Studio Day Jeffrey. It is nice to see you. Cavanaugh! I am Jeff Cavanaugh. I'm a YouTuber. Welcome in to today's daily dose of Cowboys content, the Cavanaghs, if you will. I'm going to be joined by Jon Machota of The Athletic here in just a bit. He knows. There's a link sitting in his email. He'll be here. But I was already here. So I thought, why not just start talking to people about the Cowboys? Cool stuff happening at Dallas Cowboys OTAs today. Probably the biggest stories are two things. One, CeeDee Lamb's not there. And now it costs money to not be there. CeeDee Lamb is losing money. And number two, Micah Parsons talked for about 12 minutes, and I listened to the whole thing about 4 different times. Our boy Johnny Matches from The Athletic was out there and firing questions at him, peppering Micah. And we can talk about some of the stuff that he said and some of the stuff that might be overblown and some of the stuff that might not be, because it's amazing watching people react to things people say, even if maybe the things that they're talking about aren't even in those things. I don't know. The world is weird. So those would be two of our big topics today. I've got some other things that I do want to talk to Jon Machota about as well, but it's nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to a Dallas Cowboys conversation on whatever day of the week this is. When you don't have a job, you don't know what day of the week it is. But I know it's a weekday. That I'm sure of. So we'll talk about all the Micah Parsons things, about not taking part in OTAs for the most part, and if that's actually a story or if that's not a story, because I got news for you. He wasn't here last year either for this stuff. What do voluntary mean is what Micah Parsons would like to ask you. My favorite quote, I should have pulled the audio, when he said, some people get paid to be here and some don't, and I'm not one of them. That was Micah Parsons talking about OTAs. So on one hand, Micah Parsons kind of cracks me up. But on the other hand, hold on, I don't like where my camera is. No, it's fine. On the one hand, he kind of cracks me up. On the other hand, it's just weird that it feels like while they're interviewing one of the best players in football, he's kind of trying to do his Bleacher Report show at the same time. Like it kind of feels like he's on a sports debate show talking to the media. Thank you to Rodney in the super chat. You shouldn't have done that. He said, love you, brother. I love you too. Rodney Brown, one of the finest discus throwers in the history of the world. You on at the same time as the Ben and Skin. What do I do? Oh, crap. I didn't think about it. Sorry. I don't have a job. They do. So I don't think about what time people are on. I just wanted to talk to my buddy Johnny Matches about what was going on at OTAs. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, what time can you do today? And he was like 3:30. And I was like, cool. And then guess what happened at like 3:00? He's like, can we do tomorrow? And I said, no, tomorrow is Brian Broaddus Day, bro. And he's like, oh, crap. And he's like, okay, what about 4:30? And I'm like, 4:30 works just fine. And then I got impatient and I hit go live before it was 4:30. So what are you going to do? Thank you, Tommy, with a super sticker. I don't even know what that means, but I love it. It's really time to sell high on this guy. Which one? Parsons or Lamb? Who's everybody trying to trade these days? That's what I need to know. Which guys are we trying to trade? We trying to get rid of CeeDee? They should pay CeeDee today. Just do it today. This is the Cowboy special. Because when it's not done today, it just means that they reached out and everybody was like CeeDee's agent was like, yeah, you guys saw the Justin Jefferson number. So yeah, that's fine. Just give us some more. And the Cowboys were like, no, what about just a little bit less? It's like, yeah, let's just waste each other's time. Why didn't you like put him on? Okay, like that. Hi, Johnny Matches.
What's up, man?
Hey, what are you doing?
Hanging out. Just got back from the facility.
Oh, you're actually like doing Cowboy stuff?
I was doing Cowboy stuff.
This is Jon Machota from The Athletic. I call him either Johnny Matches, Machine Gun Machota, or just Jon Machota. I was just talking to people randomly about Parsons and Lamb because I just felt like going live before you were here.
Okay.
I heard you talking to Micah a bunch. It sounded like you guys were besties as you guys were talking. The story of Micah Parsons where it's like, oh, my God, he's not at OTAs. Let's ask him all the questions about not being at OTAs when he wasn't at OTAs last year either. Is this year any different, or is it just we haven't heard from Micah in a while, so we have to ask him, hey, what's up? You weren't here.
Yeah, I think this year's a little bit different for a couple of different reasons. One, I think you can tell that Mike McCarthy wanted him to be at OTAs, and I think a lot of that stems from having a new defensive coordinator. And even you hear Dak talk today about how he says that, you know, he would prefer that Micah be there, and that he said that he had talked to Micah about that. We didn't hear those in previous years. And so that's one part of it. The other part to me is that I don't know how long they went for, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more, but it's that podcast he did with CD at the Super Bowl, and he talked about changing the culture and all that stuff like that. That changed the game there too. You know, it's tough to say all that stuff, and then when you're not at that OTA portion of it, even though it is voluntary, for there not to be questions about it. Now, anybody ripping him or anything like that, I do think that that's going too far, but he's going to get, I knew he was going to get asked, but it was going to be a main thing just because you get the sense from the team more that they wanted him to be there with the new defensive coordinator. And let's be honest, I mean, Mike McCarthy final year of his contract. Mike Zimmer's only got a 1-year deal. This could be Dak's last year in Dallas. Like, there's a lot riding on this season. And I think because of that, I think that probably heightens it a little bit more. And then also just Micah talking about leadership and things like that in the offseason. So, but I thought on his part, though, I thought it was really good that he came in with that ammo about that Aaron Donald situation, because that is so true. I mean, Aaron Donald was a beast after he didn't go to even any of training camp. So, and hey, let's be honest, Jeff, if they would have won a couple of playoff games, I don't even know if that's getting brought up either. It's the fact that they're not winning in the postseason, so a lot of people are going to point fingers in a lot of different directions.
I think it just kind of cracks me up because I feel like Micah is like his Aaron Donald thing, where he's like, Aaron Donald didn't even go to training camp. He won Defensive Player of the Year. Like I feel like Micah Parsons lives his life now doing a sports talk show. Like, he has his podcast, and so even when he's doing media, it's like he's doing a radio show.
Oh my God! And Jeff, I'll tell you this. So the portion of the interview with Micah that I'm sure was put on the team's website, and a lot of the stuff that was on the record, I can't remember exactly what it is, but I want to say it's probably about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes.
12 minutes,
Yeah, 12 minutes. Okay. So after that was over, there was probably 4 or 5 of us talking to him for another 20 minutes. And I'm telling you, there's no part of him that wanted to leave. It was PR saying over, okay, guys, okay, locker room's closed. And he keeps going. And I'm talking everything, like sumo wrestling, his friendship with other players in the league, his thoughts on Mavs Celtics. I mean, it's just like, there's nothing, like, he loves genuinely talking about. So there's no point, like, out of that 12 minutes that you probably saw or heard, that where you feel like he's even uncomfortable. Like, he send any question his way. Like, he absolutely loves it. That's why it's not a surprise to me that he joined on with that Bleacher Report. Now he's kind of running things over there because he loves to talk.
It does kind of crack me up. There's only one thing that kind of I feel like there's a lot of responses, but whatever. Like, people are going to respond to things in different ways all the time. But there's a lot of responses to things that he said, and I feel like when you see it in the written words, people are like finding things to criticize. But when you watch it and you listen to it, you're like, oh yeah, he sees. I mean, he did slip a couple of things in there about this absence, where he's like, well, you know, and you do realize that it is a business. And I'm like, aha, there you go. You admit it. This is a business. You're not paying me all the money yet, so I'm going to do what I want. And then it's like, yeah, but I'm letting my body heal. And I'm like, hold on, which one are we doing here? When he said, let me see, I pulled the quote somewhere, because I think it was you that asked him, like, how are you feeling, like, physically, and how long does it take you to recover? And he said a couple of things. So Micah Parsons says he thinks he should be under 250 pounds, and that it takes him months to recover, like, his body and his ligaments. And it sounded like he was alluding to that, like, he can do that better at home than he can in the team facility, which is also weird. But I don't know, does that seem perfectly normal to you to hear a guy say, oh yeah, it's months for me to feel okay after the season? Or does that kind of make you double down your worry on, well, he does seem to wear down at the end of years, and we are talking about a 245 pounder going to war with offensive linemen every play. I don't know, all those things.
Yeah, no, for sure. That definitely factors in, because that, you know, that's the other part of it when you talk about the Dak, CD, Micah contracts all, you know, being up. It's one thing if you're coming off of a season and those 3 guys are Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones, because they had just won a Super Bowl, and so it's easier to sell the whole, no, just bring this whole thing back. Just running this back, this is fine. It's another win. All 3 of those pieces are out there. You're down 32 midway through the 4th quarter at home against the Packers. It's harder to sell that to people, and I understand. So believe me, I'm one of them that I'm kind of left there scratching my head. That's the part of it too, where you're like, if Micah would have balled out in that game, and it kind of been one of those things where like, well, you couldn't really ask more from Micah there. I think that changes things as well too. But I don't think there's any secret to that. He does get beat up during the season, and that he does drop off at the end of the year. So that doesn't surprise me that he takes time away from that. But I will say this, I think that he could still be at OTAs and just not do the field stuff, you know what I'm saying? Because there's like, Trayvon Diggs obviously isn't right now because of he's still coming back from the ACL. So we still see him there, but he's obviously not doing the team stuff on the field. Zack Martin's kind of been like that. The first week we were out there for OTAs, DeMarcus Lawrence was like that. Like they're still in the building, they're just not doing the practice stuff because they're just resting or whatnot. So I think he could do that, and it probably maybe would make Mike McCarthy feel a little bit better. But I just really got the sense that Mike McCarthy wanted him to be around because of the new DC and because there was going to be some changes on the defense, that obviously everything starts with Micah Parsons. And that part to me is interesting because there's a part of me that we're not seeing a ton at OTAs that's going to tell us what we're going to see on Sunday. We'll see more of that in training camp, obviously. But I just get this sense that we're going to see a defense that is probably going to be better against the run, even though the defensive tackles haven't been upgraded. But I just don't think that they're going to be as aggressive taking the ball away. And it makes me wonder if they're going to be maybe letting Micah be as aggressive as they had been in the past. I wonder how that's going to impact him because he clearly wants to be aggressive. He wants as many opportunities as possible to get at the quarterback. So I'm interested to see how Zimmer balances that and how that kind of goes with those two guys because they're obviously both very strong-willed. I mean, for Micah to sit there and say, like, man, Mike Zimmer is great, he's had great players, but he's never had a Micah, and talk about himself in the third person, clearly he's dug in that, hey, I know what my worth is, and you're not going to be putting me in some situation where I can't produce.
That was kind of funny, where he's like, there's going to be some things where he's not going to compromise, and then some things where I'm not going to, and I'm like, wait, he's the coach. He's going to tell you what to do. but hey, take that out of it. We'll make this about me and you. Man, if you had his talent and you know what his talent is getting paid in the NFL and you know how rare it is to have his talent and you have a defensive coordinator that's on a 1-year deal, like is Micah really sitting there going, if I don't buy all in, I'm out at the end of the year? Like I was texting with Hellman this the other day. There's a part of me that thinks Jerry, like, when there's some people might read a Micah quote and be like, man, I don't know about this. You see the tweets, people talking about, like, I would try and trade him and get out of this right now and stuff like that. Yeah, but as long as Jerry's here, Jerry loves that stuff. Like, that's Jerry's kind of player. He likes the Michael Irvin, Des Bryant, Charles Haley. Like, that's not going to be the thing that upsets the guy that, let's be honest, he's the one that's going to make these decisions at the end of the day. I don't see a way that Micah Parsons is not on the Cowboys next year, the year after, the year after, the year after, as long as Jerry Jones owns this team. So he has a lot to say in how he's used and what he's going to be doing. Jerry's going to build Micah a studio at the Star that has it's clear windowed storefront where people can watch him broadcast. That's what's going to happen. Speaking of guys who are or aren't going to be here in a couple of years, CeeDee Lamb's not out there and it's actually costing him money now. Do you think the Justin Jefferson contract at $35 million a year gets the CeeDee Lamb contract ball easily rolling, or now are they just going to find what they're going to fight about? Where CeeDee goes, yeah, I want a penny more, and the Cowboys are like, what about a little bit less?
Yeah, I think even what you just said there would be good, just to get some talks going, because from everything I've heard, there haven't been a lot of talks, whether you talk about between, Dak's agent, Todd France, or with Zeke's agent, or with Micah. So I feel like when I saw on Monday morning that Justin Jefferson contract, I'm like, that should at least get the ball rolling. But in covering the Cowboys, I will say that it still makes me think of the week before training camp, maybe the first day of training camp, maybe the first week of training camp, as where I kind of put where I think that this could get done. Because Jerry loves a lot of publicity, a lot of positive vibes going into the start of training camp. And I think he would prefer that CeeDee be there. And when he talks about leaves falling and cards being played, nothing else really needs to be played now. You know the parameters there. You can't go to CeeDee and go, yeah, we're going to give you that Amon St. Brown deal. You can't do that. You can't do that and think, we're going to give you A.J. Brown deal. You can't. You can sit there and maybe argue with them that you're not going to give them Justin Jefferson, but it's going to have to be pretty close. And the other part of it is, and I kind of wonder if the Cowboys thought maybe about the teams that were also dealing with these wide receivers. And when I say that is, maybe the Cowboys are a little surprised that the Vikings even did that deal with Jefferson. The Cincinnati Bengals, because obviously that would be the next contract with Chase, they're not really a team that does a lot. Now, they did get it done with Burrow, but you could see them slow playing that too. So it makes me wonder if the Cowboys were like, the Vikings and Bengals aren't going to do this anytime soon too. So that's why now with that done, you really don't have an excuse not to get something done. Either side, really, because, that's the other thing. So in that part after the main interview with Micah, he made it clear that he's very fine with waiting until CD and Dak are done, because he knows the price only goes up, And so because of that, it was interesting hearing him say how he's not in a rush, because I don't know that CD was in a rush, because CD knew the longer I wait, just look at my stats. Every year I keep getting better. You're not going to be paying me under market value. And as long as these other guys keep signing, I'm going to get something comparable or above. And so why not sit there and wait and do this? And I think CD played it great.
And I guess it's not surprising to me. I guess we're just used to it now, but it is kind of amazing that the Cowboys, this is just who they are. The best players at the highest paid positions, they just don't get the contracts done. After 3 years, pay them the market, move on.
Yeah.
They let it get close. And the player's like, why would I sign now? Why don't we just wait? And they're the worst in the league at this. And they're still good at football every year, which is amazing.
It is. It gives a lot of credit to Will McClay and the crew behind the scenes that do all the drafting, because that's what put them in this situation. And let's not even act like any of the guys we're talking about were even top 10 picks. Micah was even a top 10 pick. They obviously have done very well in that department. The one thing I'll say, because I've heard that argument before about obviously them waiting long in deals and stuff like that, and I always kind of think, I haven't actually had anybody tell me this within the organization, but I always wonder a little bit on how much it factors in that they obviously got a deal done with Zeke and it didn't work out. And right in that same time, they did Lyle Collins. That would have been, if that works out with Lyle, that's a pretty team-friendly deal. That they would have been, if he's still right now, they're starting right tackle, left guard, whatever, that looks great. Jalen Smith, right around that same week or two, they got that, and it looked like they were working ahead. And it was all downhill from Jalen after that. And so because of that, you really look back, and the only one where it's really benefited them is Tyron Smith. And that's because Tyron Smith basically signed the offensive line equivalent to Patrick Mahomes' contract, where it was like, well, yeah, who wouldn't do this? 10 years? Yes. So I also think that the factor in this, too, that we have to remember is that I think the players, like Micah's fine with waiting, CD has been fine with waiting, Dak has been fine with waiting. And Trayvon Diggs could have been fine with waiting too, but he was one. I think Trayvon Diggs could have probably gotten $3-4 million more a year if he really wanted to hold out to the very end. But he wanted to get that deal done before training camp started. And so yeah, it's been tough for the Cowboys, but I still think they're going to get all three done eventually. I can't tell you that's going to happen in what order and when, but I can't see Jerry just doesn't let superstars in their prime go.
No. And I do think, to me, the reason those certain contracts get done and the other ones don't, it goes back to stupid crap that Jerry says before the draft every year, where they're allergic to picking up phones unless they're ringing. It's no. If the player comes to us, then we're going to get a good deal. We'll sign that guy. But if we go to them, they know they got us. And it's just a real dumb ego thing that goes on. So yes, of course, Jalen Smith was willing to do a contract. And of course, Lyle Collins was willing, but it's the best at premium positions. We can't call them. They'll know how much they get. We just got it, and it's all dumb.
What I think they really, real quick, I think what they might have overvalued, or Jerry overvalues, I think, is the Cowboys in the brand, thinking that they're going to take less than reign with the Cowboys, because I do think, I don't need to speak for those players. I'll speak for myself. I've now been at the Athletic for 5 years. When my contracts come up, my bosses ask me, like most bosses will ask you when it comes to contracts, what do you want to keep? What do you want to keep doing this? Is there another job? Do you want to be an NFL writer? Do whatever. And I always tell them, I'm trying to cover the Cowboys as long as I possibly can, because there is value in it. There is a certain level of even when they're bad, it's way better than most teams, even on their good years. There is something about hitching your wagon to the Cowboys that there's a lot of drama. They're very Kardashian-like, where sometimes there's not a lot of substance, but there's a lot of drama. So I do understand where Jerry comes from. The brand does mean something. And I will say, even Micah talked a little bit about that too, after his main interview session, where he's very aware of legacy, and he knows the value of his legacy being a Dallas Cowboy is more valuable than him spending that legacy somewhere else. Now, of course, it has to come with winning, and he has to play at a high level, but part of me thinks Jerry knows that, but maybe even overvalues it too much. No, these guys will come back. And I think the biggest eye-opener was to him is that last Dak contract. I don't think Jerry, maybe even in his business life away from football, feels like he got worked the way he got worked by, Dak and Todd France. And Dak got a great contract, got paid at the top of the market, was coming off a gruesome injury where his bone was sticking out of his skin. No trade clause, no franchise tag. He got everything he wanted, and he's still the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, and I would argue that's probably the most valuable position when you talk about endorsements in all sports.
We heard the retirement word as it pertains to Zack Martin today, but then I saw Clarence tweet following up where he was like, look, Zach's not saying he's retiring after the year and he's not focusing on that. So I guess people just like asked him about it. And I mean, I've been predicting for 2 years that this is Zach's last year. So I do think that it is, but like, what was that scene like out there today?
Yeah, you could tell that, obviously this was going to be our last availability until training camp because they have a team event tomorrow, but there's no media access. So I did see Zach was talking to some people. I think he was trying to clarify everything that was going on. I was talking to a couple other players during that, but I knew that that's what was going, because the last thing he wants this to look like is the retirement tour, and because that's a storyline that will last all season long. But I agree with you. That wouldn't surprise me. And I really felt like I thought about that a lot during this draft this year, because I really thought that way with Marshawn Nealon in the second round, where you're just like, well, DeMarcus Lawrence, same draft class as Zach, obviously 2014. And it was kind of like, well, final year of his contract, this could be insurance for him. And then in the second round, they take BB, and obviously our storylines right now are that, that'll be your center for this year. But I also look at that as like, well, if he's just okay at center and they think he's going to be an outstanding right guard, that's also possibly your Zack Martin replacement. And so, DeMarcus talked today, and it doesn't sound like he is even thinking about retirement. Obviously, he'll need a new contract, but no, I wouldn't rule that out with Zack Martin at all. Tyron Smith is now gone. Zach is obviously the elder statesman in the room, and it's kind of like I just find it hard to believe that if he's thinking about retirement right now, and at the end of the year he plays really well, and let's say they do make a deep run, let's say they have a great season, McCarthy gets a contract extension, Dak, everything gets taken care of. Like, is he really going to be like, let me retire now, if he still feels like it's going on the up, But if it's like a disaster season, then that's where I think that, I could be like, what, I don't know if I want to go through another offseason, do this all over again,
Or if it's the standard season that I think I'm expecting, it's going to be 12 wins, you might win a first-round game, and then you'll go home. Yeah. And then he'll be like, well, been here before, I guess I'll just go home.
And if that is the case, what I mean, I'm not going to – it's just the fact that you had – Tyron Smith and Zack Martin for that long. There's no doubt you're putting their names in your Ring of Honor, and the fact that having those guys together with it wasn't like they were alone. They obviously had a good team around. To not having got past the divisional round of the playoffs, it's tough, but it also shows you that's football, because if you have two Ring of Honor guys in the NBA and probably even Major League Baseball and probably the NHL, like, you're probably going to win. You don't think so?
Not MLB. Ohtani and Trout, my God.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe not hockey either, but NBA, I feel very confident. If you have LeBron and Wade, or even Wade and Bosch, probably, if they play their whole careers together, probably win at least one title. So
Luka and Kyrie, it's about
Luka and Kyrie. There you go.
Is there anything? So we just covered all of the reason that covering the Cowboys is fun, because I just ripped off the gigantic names that said words today. But other things from OTAs, like, is there a storyline that you find interesting, like position groups or who's doing what? Something that is not the glamorous, hey John, I have to ask you about what so and so said.
Not really, and I hate to downgrade mini camp and OTAs, but. Because
both.
Right, but because the collective bargaining agreement, it is just it's almost like this. If it gets too entertaining out there, you're almost like, they could be lining themselves up for some fines, because like, you really can't have a lot of contact even when you do 11 on 11. It's just not not even 11, 7 on 7, and so it's hard to get a lot out of that. In terms of, this guy looks like he's really turned the corner and stuff like that. So for me, it's more so, looking at guys that like where they're having them work, and could this guy have a bigger role? And so in that case, for me, like Kevontae Turpin, something I'm looking at is like, I wonder who's going to be like their fourth top like receiving player. So that's not just obviously wide receivers, because last year, Tony Pollard and Michael Gallup were in the top 5 of, in terms of receptions, receiving yards, things like that. Well, they're both gone. Who fills those roles? And it's hard to see that running back room and say, well, is it going to be one of them? Is somebody filling Tony Pollard's role? Because it's going to be a committee. Is that going to be Zeke? And so it's like, after, like, I think at the top, it's going to be CeeDee, it's going to be Cooks, it's going to be Jake Ferguson. But who's going to be that next? The odds-on favorite will be Jalen Tolbert, but I still haven't seen enough to say, okay, yes, you can guarantee that Jalen Tolbert will be ready. He'll take that role. Like, he probably will, but Turpin is one that I think he's going to get a lot more usage in that offense than we've seen before. I just think that they're going to use him in a little bit more of a variety than we've seen in the past. So, which will be interesting, because whether you're talking about Mike McCarthy and his time with Green Bay or just us following the Cowboys, like there just isn't a time where like, you know, Cooks is small, Deuce Vaughn is small, Cavante Turpin is small. Like we're used to, you know, Miles Austin and Terrence Williams and Des Bryant and CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and even when you think of McCarthy winning the Super Bowl, like Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings and Donald Driver, you know, I mean, they had Cobb after, but it's going to be interesting. That makes me wonder, like, how much they're going to, you know, be getting the ball up quick around the line of scrimmage and doing some stuff different there. But yeah, to come on here and tell you that, oh yeah, there's just some like there's a nice 40-yard bomb that Trey Lance threw to Jalen Tolbert today.
Yes.
So it is, yeah, and so yeah, that's nice and all, but I wouldn't say that both sides. I mean, they don't have pads on, they're not whatever. Like, but those are the type of things when it happens, I immediately think, oh yeah, that happens at training camp, and there's video of that going out there. That's going to be one of those things that people are going to be gravitating to for sure. So
there's video of that out there. In other words, when you send the video out, Jon Machota is video god of training camp.
Yeah. So. And so that's definitely something that like has caught my eye because obviously we're watching Trey Lance, but the other thing I'll say, and not that this shouldn't be, you know, this is unexpected, but I mean, Dak just looks super comfortable. I mean, he looks the part of a guy that honestly, like, it just doesn't make sense that he didn't play better against Green Bay because all of last season he just looked so good, so comfortable. Obviously coming in second for MVP. I mean, he was one of the better players in the league. But there's just something about January that it's been an issue, and you just can't, there's nothing I can see right now to sit there and say, like, ooh, if this doesn't pick up, like, you just don't know. I mean, all you can say is get these guys, as many as possible, healthy, and get in the playoffs and just see what happens. But yeah, no, there's no major, like, oh, this guy, like, you know, Marshawn Nealon or something is like, no, there's really nothing like that that's, like, jumped out from these OTAs or minicamp.
Jon Machota, you can read him on The Athletic. You can listen to him on the About Them Cowboys podcast. Johnny Matches, I love you, buddy.
I love you too, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, I'll send you your $1 million. And remember, everybody that's out there listening or watching, you have no idea what anyone's going through, so be cool to everyone. I love you. Be easy.